Welcome back to What Healing Knows. Before we begin, take one breath with me, a small return to yourself. Healing often begins in moments exactly like this one. After more than 20 years in medicine, one truth has remained constant. The body already knows how to heal. What it needs is for us to listen. This space is an invitation to do exactly that. To slow down, to listen, to notice what rises before the mind rushes to explain it away. What Healing Knows blog is an 8-segment healing journey with 7 reflections in each segment. Together, they explore what the body carries, what it remembers, and what it already knows about healing. I'm Dr. Kidi, and welcome to Segment 4, Honoring the Truth. Episode 2, Say What You Know, When Knowing Becomes Language. In this reflection, we explore the gap between what we know and what we say. Why truth is often softened before it reaches language, and what happens to the body when we repeatedly speak around what we know instead of through it. We will explore the Tinfash Healing Time, the moment between knowing and speaking, where healing, honesty, and choice begin. Sit back, relax, and listen to heal. Say what you know. Reflection. Wishet, let us know. My father used to say, a lie is for the self. It took me years to understand what he meant. Now, when I say it to my children, I make it simpler, hoping they learn sooner than I did that awareness is the first step towards living in truth in a way that aligns with your humanity and your well-being. There is something strangely unsettling about someone saying, I'm almost there, when they have not even left yet. Not because of the extra wait time, but because for a moment they distort your reality to soften their own discomfort. So lies are rarely about other people. Think about the last lie you told. It could be something small like saying, I'm 5 minutes away when you are 15, or it could be something larger. Either way, pause for a moment and ask yourself why you told it. If you sit with the answer honestly, you may realize it had very little to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you. You wanted to avoid disappointment, avoid conflict, avoid being seen differently. You wanted relief from the discomfort of the truth, even if only for a moment. And underneath all of that, something more instinctive was happening. Your nervous system was trying to protect you. This is not a character flaw. It is biology. Neuroscientists have found that social pain, the fear of conflict, rejection, the fear of being too much or not enough, activates the same regions in the brain as physical pain. The body responds to a threatened relationship the way it responds to physical wound. So when the truth rises and you swallow it back down, your nervous system does what it was built to do, protect you from what it perceives as danger. And here's what is worth looking at closely. You think the lie protects you, your comfort, your integrity, the relationship, but the self that avoids the truth is not kept safe by avoidance. It is slowly hallowed by it. Every time your words move around what you know instead of Through it, a small gap opens between who you are and how you are living. Over time, that gap becomes the exhaustion, the tightening, the weight you carry without knowing why. The mind is also very good at rewriting the story after the fact. You tell the lie, and then you tell yourself a second lie about why you told the first one. So I was afraid becomes I was being kind. The original knowing gets buried, and the gap widens without you noticing. When people who justify the untruth or repeat it until it feels like the truth often feel the strain of it in the body. That's an exhaustion that comes from carrying one reality internally while speaking another externally. Psychologists call this emotional or cognitive dissonance, the tension created when what we know no longer matches with what we say. The nervous system feels the split and remains alert through stress, anxiety, disturbed sleep, and irritability. Over time, a body forced to live in that constant state of internal misalignment becomes more vulnerable to exhaustion, illness, and emotional distress. Speaking what you know is not simply communication. It's integrity made audible, and the body responds differently when truth, language, and inner experience move in the same direction. Repeated again and again, the alignment becomes a pattern, and patterns become rituals, honest rituals, healing rituals, softening the truth. I once asked a young patient sitting on my exam table how she was doing. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, crying, or perhaps both. She answered with a simple, "I'm fine." Before she even finished the sentence, tears rolled down her face. She was not fine. So why was the truth so difficult to say? Because many of us do this in quieter ways every day. We say, "I'm fine," instead of "I'm struggling." We say, "It doesn't matter," instead of "It does." And here is why. We soften the truth to make what the body feels seem safer, smaller, easier to carry. We choose the version of the truth that costs us the least in the moment. At first, softening can feel like strength, like composure, like control. But over time, it becomes a way of abandoning what the body knows while slowly erasing the truth alongside it. And most of us, if we're honest, have softened ourselves so many times that eventually it becomes a way of living. The gap between knowing and saying. Early in my medical training, I noticed something that took me years to name. During patient interviews on residency rounds, there was a moment that kept repeating itself. A physician would ask a question. The patient would pause, not because they did not know, but because they were reaching for the truest version of what they knew. And before they could arrive, someone in the room would fill the silence. Another question, a reworded version of the first, sometimes even the answer itself offered up like a suggestion. Then we move on. We called it efficiency. But often, what we interrupted was not silence. It was truth trying to arrive. What we practiced was hearing without listening. Hearing receives words. Listening makes space for what the words are still becoming. Doctors are not the only ones who interrupt that gap. It happens in conversations everywhere, even within ourselves, where our thoughts interrupt before the truth fully arrives. That gap is time. Time between what people know and what they say. time between truth and language. And I call that time the Tinfash Healing Time. In What Healing Knows practice, the Tinfash Healing Time is the space between knowing and speaking. It is the moment between the urge to say something and the words that finally leave your mouth. And inside that moment, a choice is always being made, whether to speak, whether to soften, whether to stay silent, whether to abandon what you know in order to stay safe. This is where the editing begins. I'm fine when you're not. It's okay when it's not. It's not a big deal when it is. The nervous system moves quickly to reshape truth into something safer, smaller, easier to offer, based on the fear from the past and anxiety of the future. So how do we enter the gap? The Tinfash Healing Time. At What Healing Knows, we use the Tinfash 5C practice. First, we pause when we feel the urge to speak, because in that pause, the editing thoughts will arrive. The ones that say it's not the right moment, that the other person cannot handle the truth, that silence is easier. Then we move to 5C. Count to 3. Close your eyes if you can. Count your breath long enough to return to yourself. Create distance from the thoughts asking you to hide the truth. Let the thoughts move past, like leaves floating down a stream. Notice them without reaching for them. Then choose to speak from what the body already knows. That's the practice. Simple, but not easy. Now remember that the Tinfash 5 Cs do not silence fearful thoughts, but they create enough distance for you to recognize them for what they are: protection, not wisdom. What you say after that pause will not be perfect. It does not need to be. It only needs to be true. And truth, spoken from the Tinfash Healing Time, even quietly, even imperfectly, lands differently than anything the editing mind produces. The person across from you will feel the difference, and so will you, and so will your body. Healing lives in that choice. Closing. I have spent years returning to my father's words. Wushet, let us know. A lie is for the self. I now understand that he was not talking about morality. He was talking about anatomy. When you withhold the truth, you're not deceiving the other person. You're deceiving yourself. The other person may never know, but the body always does. You may distort the other person's reality, but you distort your healing first, because the body registers every word that moves around the truth. It carries the distance between what you know and what you say. And the larger that gap becomes, the harder it is to feel whole. And also remember that speaking truth does not mean using honesty to wound. Truth, spoken with care, is not cruelty. And when words come from listening deeply to the body, they tend to move towards connection rather than harm. Why? Because the body is always trying to move toward life, toward safety, toward connection, toward what allows both self and humanity to thrive. The body's truth and humanity's well-being are not in conflict. They move in the same direction. So when you honor what your body knows, you're not only protecting yourself, you are contributing something honest to every relationship you enter. This is the deeper meaning. of my father's words. But what happens when truth has a price? What happens when saying what you know risks something real? A relationship, a position, a version of yourself you have worked hard to maintain. And that's what we will cover in episode 3, when the truth feels costly. If you are still here, something in you has already said yes. That is not a small thing. That is the fire beginning to stir. Thank you for letting me walk beside you on this part of your journey. If this reflection spoke to something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your words matter here, and they often become the reminders someone else needed to hear. I would love to stay connected on this path with you. Until next time, keep listening, keep returning. Healing knows the way. With love and more love, Dr. Kidi.